Karoline Leavitt, the youngest White House press secretary in history, was exhausted as she boarded her flight to Manchester, New Hampshire. After endless briefings, press calls, and the constant stress of Washington, D.C. politics, she longed for a few quiet days in her hometown. There she could briefly escape her high-profile role and return to being just Caroline, the girl who once scooped ice cream at her family's shop. As she walked down the aisle of the packed plane, Caroline appreciated her first-class seat. For someone who traveled constantly as part of the White House team, the extra space wasn't a luxury, but a necessity, a small moment of peace before returning to the chaos of her job. She settled in, placing her bag under the seat in front of her and preparing for a smooth journey home. That's when she noticed him, an elderly man, perhaps in his 80s, making his way slowly down the aisle. He wore a well-worn jacket and a cap that proudly displayed World War II veteran. Caroline watched as he gripped each seat for support, moving with careful determination, while most passengers remained absorbed in their phones or impatiently waited for boarding to finish. In his tired eyes, she saw not just physical exhaustion, but the weight of someone who had carried heavy burdens throughout life. When the flight attendant directed the veteran to a cramped middle seat deep in economy class, Caroline made a split-second decision. She stood up and offered him her first-class seat. The old man was surprised and initially refused, but Caroline insisted, saying, "You've already done so much for this country. Let me do this for you." Finally, he accepted with a gentle smile and even invited her for coffee after they landed. As Caroline moved to the back of the plane, she felt many eyes following her act of kindness. After settling into her new seat in row 26B, the man beside her leaned over and whispered, "You know who that is, right?" When Caroline looked confused, he continued, "That's Joseph Monroe. He wasn't just any paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne during World War II. After the war, he got caught up in CIA Black Ops, missions that don't officially exist. Then in the 1970s, he disappeared completely. Some think he was involved in something major that the government wanted hidden." Caroline initially dismissed this as conspiracy talk, but when Monroe turned and looked directly at her with a piercing, knowing gaze, she felt oddly unsettled. Something about his expression seemed to confirm the stranger's words. The flight was increasingly strange. A man seated in 24A kept turning to watch Monroe. Then the captain announced they would be in a holding pattern for 20 minutes due to an unexpected systems check from air traffic control. Caroline's seatmate scoffed, saying such checks weren't normal at cruising altitude. This was intentionally vague language meant to hide something. Following her instincts, Caroline unbuckled her seatbelt and walked back to speak with Monroe. He gestured for her to sit beside him and spoke quietly. "You have no idea what you just walked into." When she asked what he meant, he explained that people were watching him. People who don't like old secrets resurfacing. The flight delay, he confirmed, was because of him. Before they could talk further, a man approached, the same one from seat 24A. "Miss Leavitt, I need you to come with me," he stated firmly. Monroe gripped her wrist with surprising strength for his age, warning her not to go. The man showed a badge identifying himself as Federal Aviation Administration and insisted it was a security matter. Though reluctant, Caroline decided to follow him to understand what was happening. Near the cockpit, another official waited. They explained that Monroe possessed classified materials that could compromise national security, and they needed her help because he trusts you. Caroline insisted she knew nothing. She had simply given up her seat. Suddenly, their radios crackled with urgent messages. Their expressions changed dramatically before they hurried toward the cockpit. Moments later, the plane lurched violently downward, sending drinks flying and passengers screaming. The captain announced unexpected turbulence, but Caroline recognized this wasn't normal. When she returned to Monroe, he remained eerily calm amidst the chaos. "It's not turbulence," he told her quietly. "It's them, the ones who don't want me to land." He reached down to his bag and told her she needed to take it, no matter what happened. Inside was a sealed government envelope and a flash drive hidden beneath some clothes. The intercom crackled with the captain's voice, but something sounded wrong. His words were too measured, too controlled as he announced an unscheduled landing. One of the officials emerged from the cockpit, without Monroe, and walked directly toward Caroline. She knew he was after the bag. When he asked her to come with him, she refused. "If I go with you, The whole plane will know something's wrong, she said quietly. You want quiet. You want control. But if you drag me out of this seat, you won't have that anymore. The agent hesitated, looking around at the watching passengers and uncertain flight attendants. Caroline pretended to relax, saying she just wanted to land safely. To her surprise, the agent nodded slightly and walked away. Moments later, the real captain's voice came through the intercom, strained and terrified. This is your captain. Do not land this plane. Then silence. The plane seemed to fight against some external force, as if the controls were being manipulated. Caroline gripped Monroe's bag tightly. She didn't know where they were headed or who she could trust, but she understood that whatever information was on that flash drive was important enough for someone to take over an entire plane. Some secrets were dangerous to uncover, but sometimes the truth needed to come out, no matter the cost. As the plane continued its descent toward an unknown destination, Caroline faced a crucial decision. Should she try to hide the evidence and protect herself, or should she find a way to ensure these important secrets wouldn't stay buried? Whatever she decided, her simple act of kindness, giving up her seat to a veteran, had drawn her into something far bigger and more dangerous than she could have imagined.